Lead and Empower Her with Dr. Julie Ducharme, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Lead and Empower Her with Dr. Julie Ducharme is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Dr. Julie Ducharme.
Hi, welcome to the She CEO podcast. I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, back for another episode. We are so excited to be here and interviewing women around the world about their stories and what they're doing to make change in the world. I'm really excited today to have Nicola here. She's an international empowerment mindset mentor and transformational coach, neuro change practitioner, quantum field practitioner, heart math coach, educator, author, podcaster. And what does this mean? She loves empowering women, which all of you women know that I love empowering women. So this is just a match made in heaven. And she loves women to transform into their powerful, authentic selves safely, without overwhelm, and in alignment with their values and priorities. That is She Talks, essentially, which we need to get you next speaking at She Talks. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm so excited to be here. I just love what you're doing and how you're bringing us all together through story, through experience, giving us tips, how-tos, and it's just amazing what you're doing. You really are an inspiration. So thank you very much.
Well, and thank you for joining it. You just came to our She Talks just a couple days ago. And I always tell everyone, now you're in the sisterhood. I'm not letting you out. And, something that it just really... It just makes my heart melt that you want to help transform women, because as I've entered into this industry of working with women, one of the heartbreaks I have is hearing about women and their trauma and being stuck in their trauma and having a hard time transforming into, if you will, from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And so, I look at this and I think there's so many women and there's not enough of us, and we need 20, 30, 40, 100, 150 of us, reaching the millions of women around the world. And so I'm really excited that you're doing this, because this is impactful, and it's impactful for me and so many other women. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I want to leave a legacy that's better. And I want to leave, if something ever happens to me, I want women like you who can come around her and surround her. So I want to go back to, how in the world did you start getting into transforming women and to be their authentic self?
Well, it started when I was young. I was very young, actually, when I started to notice power that some women had. And it really started when I was about 6 years old, actually. I was at Westminster Abbey with my parents. We were invited along to a very swaggy affair where the Queen was going to be there. And I remember distinctly all male dignitaries there. We were all standing alongside a red carpet in Westminster Abbey. And as I looked to my right, I was this little girl pushed into the forefront, standing amongst these men with huge top hats on. And I remember looking to the right, seeing this diminutive, tiny little lovely woman coming towards me, dressed in a white dress and a blue sash and a crown on her head. I mean, I was just 6 years old, so I didn't really know what was going on. And I remember thinking, look at her. Look at her. And I remember thinking that there were a lot of men and she was the only woman. And as she passed by, she stopped by me and she looked down, because it must have looked a bit strange, this little girl standing amongst all these men. And she smiled. And as she smiled, I looked at her. And again, I had that, it was like a feeling of maple syrup running through my veins. And I had this feeling of strength when I looked at her. And it was from then on that I suddenly realized that as I was getting older, women do have so much power within them. And she was glorified in that way that she had it, but she also took it to the next level. She needn't have done, but she did as queen, and went through some tough times and challenges and made it through. And a story is a legacy, as we all know, Queen Elizabeth II. And as I grew older and I was working in the corporate world, I began to find that I had a knack, if you like, for talking to women as we were all growing together. And there was this invisible glass ceiling, and it started to come quite natural to me to start encouraging them not to give up, to look at the way men were doing business. And I remember quite distinctly, I think I was about 21 at this point, saying we don't have to do things like men do. We can do it our way, and we can get there, and we can push through. So it was very, I think I was like the first in my generation, and especially in my family, to start recognizing that women had this power. And also I was fortunate because my mother had her own business in London at a very young age, which was very rare. And my grandparents also had their own businesses. So we're all entrepreneurs. And as I grew through the corporate world, I got to see a lot of blocks and where women certainly were pushed back, and it was difficult for them to break through. And it started to frustrate me. And I realized that for many of them, it was through lack of confidence and belief in themselves. And also, they were working in isolation. They weren't working together. They weren't collaborating on these challenges that they were having. They thought it was just them, as you mentioned earlier, and that no one else was going through this, or that they weren't good enough to make the promotion that they were looking for. So I was really working on the back end for quite a while with women, just naturally doing this and encouraging and motivating and really enjoying it. I didn't think there could ever be a career in it for me. Until I started studying in London. I started doing holistic medicine. I was very interested in holistic arts and the mind, body, spirit, and the approach to neuro-linguistic work and also neuro work and how our brains work. And I suddenly caught on to the fact that through all our training as women, we've been exposed to so many patterns and cultures and ways of being that we've been brainwashed many times into believing that we can't do things. So again, that was another motivating factor. And so there's been quite a lot since I've been growing up. As I said, I was fortunate to come from an amazing family who had their own businesses. So I was taught resilience at a very young age. And I just want to share that because, you know, a lot of this comes down to sometimes women give up too soon, or they believe that they can't do something, or they believe they're the only ones going through a difficult time and feel isolated. And this is where if we build communities of women like you're doing, we can all learn from each other. And that's something I was doing in London. I mean, I worked with the BBC, I worked with Mrs. Thatcher. You know, I was fortunate to study under Princess Diana's homeopath. I mean, I was really fortunate. It was like the universe opened up and placed me. I had no intention of doing all of this. It was just where I landed. So I grabbed that opportunity and learned from it. And now I just love sharing everything that I've learned to help women thrive and grow and look after themselves too.
I love that. And you mentioned some things like neurolinguistics and how the mind works. Can you expand a little bit more? Because I know a little bit about neurolinguistics, but I'd love to just have a little better explanation of that. And for our listeners too, maybe have never heard of that before.
Well, there are methods now available to us, which we didn't really understand before, that help to retrain the brain. You can have real-time experiential experiences, as they're called, where you can actually be mentoring somebody in a situation that feels very real to them. And what happens is the brain believes anything you tell it, basically. It doesn't know what's right, it doesn't know what's wrong. And so you start to retrain the brain away from the negative experience that it's had over the years and introduce a new positive thought. But it's not just thinking, it's the feeling that comes with it. The brain needs to know that you're actually experiencing something new. So, for example, on when we were at your conference at the weekend, I was fortunate enough to meet a lovely lady who's looking to expand her business. And she announced over lunch that she was an introvert and that she couldn't speak up and it was hard for her to do that. And talking with her, I said, well, why is that? And she said, well, I've been told that. That's my label and I don't feel I can. Now, in that situation, I would work with a woman that way by introducing her to some methods where I'm talking with her and I'm asking her questions that land her in a new place of being or awareness as we're talking. And she starts to get a connection with something that's different for her. And the more you do that and introduce yourself to a new situation, the brain starts to begin to think it's your real. So NLP for giving you new experiences for the brain to start believing. But it's like everything, it needs to be a pattern sustained over time. And so with regular practice, like for example, when you learn to drive a car or when you learn to ride a bicycle, your brain got used to that because it was being, you know, trained.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with anything, your thoughts, your belief systems about yourself. You can just regularly pick one overriding belief. Let's say it's I'm introverted, right? And start shifting on working little steps to build your confidence. Like every time you have a thought that's like, oh, I'm not good enough, or they're not going to want to hear me and what I have to say, it's shifting to I have something to say, I can speak, and having a feeling of excitement behind that.
That's powerful. I've never heard someone talk about being able to help someone get out of being introverted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like and I like to say it's funny because obviously I have to be on stage and I have to talk a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of front facing for me. So when I was playing sports, that's like my world, right? Being on the court playing, who cares if there's thousands of people watching? I don't care because I'm in my world. And even though I got a degree in communications, which encompasses public speaking, I've been public speaking for a long time. I still find myself sometimes wanting to be an introvert when I'm in a room full of people because it's a lot of energy that I have to expel out. It's not that I don't want to talk to people. It's just sometimes, my world, so I always say I have a couple different worlds. I have obviously my public speaking world, and then I have my world where I would just prefer to be in a corner reading a book,
Mm-hmm.
even though I know I need to go to all these events and all these things. And so I was working on a lot of different training because sometimes I would get overwhelmed with so many people in my bubble, right? 20 people in my bubble talking to me really close. And so I worked with a guy on that of how do I gently move people back out of my bubble so I can still talk with them, but like not feel like I'm getting overwhelmed with, all these people. So we spent some time doing that because that was when we were working together. He said, well, what's your toughest thing? I said, I get overwhelmed sometimes. I have 20 people in my face, all talking
Mm-hmm.
to me at once. And I
Mm-hmm.
need to, how do I gently do that without offending anyone? So he gave me these different processes to do it. And you're
Good.
right. I mean, that was like it's like a mental training I had to work on to
Mm-hmm.
really kind of focus and be like, it's okay that there's 20 people in your face right now, all talking to you at the same time. That's okay. You know,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
Let's just move it back. And so I like that because I mean, I think too about trauma, PTSD,
Mm.
things like that. When you said the mind doesn't know, it's true. I've heard that before, like with PTSD, the mind doesn't know. It still thinks it's there,
Mhm. Mhm.
and helping women transcend that, I think, is really important. Um, and the quantum side, I've been reading a book about the quantum side of it, and it's like it's blowing my mind because it's very scientific, but it's very, very interesting. I've never delved into that before. But it makes sense, but I'm still kind of trying to grasp that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
me too. It's like
it's
one of those things that it's I work in the frequencies and the energy, just like
yeah.
you talked about, and the energies that are unseen, and it's the vibrational quality and what you put out there, you get back, and
Mhm.
how does that all work? And yeah, it's complicated. Or I mean, I often say to people, it's all of what the unknown is. It's embracing the unknown. Sometimes we can't grasp it or wrap our head around it, but you quite succinctly described the overwhelming of energy coming at you when
Mhm.
there's a lot of energy in your that's quantum physics. You're feeling the energy that's being put
Mhm.
out through people's
Yeah.
biofields and magnetic fields, and you're sensing it, and
Mhm.
you're recognizing that, oh yeah, this is a challenge for me, so I need to take a step to make a change here, which is wonderful. It's very much a growth mindset that
Mhm.
you're in, and you took steps to change that. And it is the unseen, very much the unknown, and what we operate in that we're beginning to discover more of these days that make us tick, make us make the choices that we do. We're so complicated. We're these electrical beings. We're made up of
Mhm.
skin and bone. There's so much to us. It's
Yeah.
incredible. It's,
It- Well, and I years ago, I mean, being an athlete, I feel like that's really helped me in the mindset world. Obviously, I had to be very disciplined. I had to be very focused. I had to be able to work in controlled chaos, right? Thousands of people, loud noise, but yet at the same time communicate with my team and successfully, implement the tasks that were needed for me to do. So I felt it's been really good for me as I've gotten older and things have shifted. I think, like you said, I feel that energy, right? That overpowering energy, And so it's been kind of interesting as I've had to really work with my mindset and really focus on, okay, I rely a lot on my training from, years and years of
Yeah.
playing to go like, how did I deal with that situation where I had, all this noise and these people? And I think it's just so interesting. I know we could like dive into this for hours. I could talk to you for hours about this because I'm so all about the mindset, but I don't want to not let our listeners also learn about, though, many women obviously are CEOs listening to this,
Mhm.
CEOs, CFOs, CAOs, you name it. And then
Yeah.
there's also women aspiring obviously to get to this. And so with any successful business, as you are running a successful, transformational, I think incredibly rewarding business,
Yes, it is.
I'm sure there were some struggles along the way. And I'd love to hear about the struggles, but how you successfully navigated those struggles to build up to where you are today.
Yeah, I think with my business, I mean, I arrived from London to Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody. I mean, I had my partner at the time and my sister, but I didn't know anybody in terms of a network or friends. And I had this idea and dream of creating my own business in America, having worked in corporate in London, and thought I knew everything there was to know about business. And I'd successfully worked with CEOs, CFOs, politicians, the whole thing, but didn't really know a huge amount apart from what my family had gone through with their own businesses, which helped a bit. So for me, the challenge was selling, getting myself out there, and just to get really nitty gritty about, sales here. Um, you've really got to believe in what you're doing. And what I was selling at the time was a little out there. It wasn't entirely under this package that I have now. And I quickly realized I spoke a different language to Americans. So I had to learn a whole new language of how to sell myself. And what transpired was I began to quickly realize that collaboration
Mm.
with existing businesses was going to be good for me.
Mm.
And really bringing to the table what I had to offer, believing in it, and in every cell of my being, to present this with these people I wanted to collaborate with so that I could bring them something of value. And then hopefully they would see what I had and would take it to their clients. So building a community, first of all, became a solution to my initial problem, not knowing anyone. And I am an introvert. I'm like you, though. I need time out. And usually we do need time out when we're introverts, but we can still step into the fray when we need to. And so it wasn't easy for me. And I had to break through a lot of that. What are people going to think? I'm British, I'm working here now in America. I came up against some resistances of why are you here? You're an immigrant. It was really interesting what was coming up, even though we spoke, the same language pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I had to get through a lot of that. What can I call it? Well, I'll just call it difficulties from people and what they were thinking of me. And so collaboration, but I worked through it, and collaboration, community, and speaking with people, spending time with people. I quickly recognized that everyone had problems, and what was the solution that I could provide.
Yeah.
That's really all that mattered. And it felt really good because the more that I felt accomplished, the more business I started doing. And as I started to grow and become quite known in the community, a lot more women started coming to me who were really confused about their purpose and why they were here and wanted direction. And I felt that I wasn't good enough to be helping them do that at the time. And this is 27 years ago. I didn't feel I was good enough. And so I was working through some self-esteem and confidence issues myself. So got myself a coach, got myself into some programs where I could learn, start learning about building confidence and improving even more my mindset, even though I had training in it. And so as I grew over the years, what kept coming up as a bigger problem was the fact that, I say this, my partner at the time felt that it was just my hobby.
Mm, yeah.
It wasn't serious enough. And even God bless them, my family, and I love them to pieces. There were times when I don't think they really knew what I was doing either,
Mhm.
and said, "Oh, well, this is something that's just a passing fad, and she'll move on to something else." So there was that, having to prove that
Yeah.
too, and moving through that. And so there's a lot of self-belief, confidence growing, really believing in what I was doing, and really getting very deep diving into what is the value that I bring. What is it that's going to make a difference? What can bring a solution to this person? And that took a number of years to work out.
Yeah.
That took a number of years.
That resonates with me because as you were talking about confidence, right? We have, all these brilliant women, you included, who I see every day, right? And they're brilliant. And then there's that lack of confidence. And I know I had that at one point. Like I said, I go back to my training. I had to be confident on the court. So that's definitely
Right.
helped. I definitely had these moments where I walked into a room and I might be the most qualified person in the room, but it is absolutely still intimidating because all these other very qualified people are sitting in there. And we always talk about women don't always take a seat at the table.
That's
And
right.
I learned too, it wasn't that there wasn't a seat for me. It's just I naturally sat at the back.
Yeah.
Culturally, I think that there's a lot of different ways, unintentionally, really, that women sit at the back. And of course, there's obviously definitely barriers there too. But I think that's so important to recognize that you can be the most brilliant, highly intelligent, qualified person in the world, and also be the one that feels the least qualified for it,
Mhm.
right? Like we always talk about these brilliant, gorgeous models, and they think they're not pretty, or I mean, I seriously meet women who are like, okay, well, I have 4 degrees right now, but I think I'm going to go get another one. Have you heard this before? I'm going
All
to
the
go get
time.
another one. One other one, because I think I just need one more degree. And I'm like, why do you need 5 degrees? I don't understand. Right. But they think like and I did this too, if I just get one more thing, one more award, that's going to make my resume look good. And now they're going to want me. Right. And I always tell the story that, I have this epiphany moment about 10 years into this, whole like Julie must get, every award and win everything and do everything, that I went, huh, I have been smart enough all along. Like you have this epiphany, which I was actually having coffee this morning with Catherine Gray from our event, and she was like, "Wow, you have this like huge resume of all these things you did," and I was like, "Yeah, there's a story with that." And
It's a
but I
story.
appreciate that because hearing from you, you have this successful business, but for you to say like, "Listen, I had all this training, but I then went and got some more training to help me be confident that I could do the training." And I appreciate that because not all of us, want to say that we're experts in our industry, but we had to start somewhere. And
Thank you.
as you talked about your parents and family as well, that I love my family and parents and friends as well. I do have a lot of friends and family who are like, I don't understand how you make money like that. That's what they say. They go, we get that you do it well, but I just don't get it. And so, someone at our event, I think it was Tracy Holland was talking about this, how she was had this giant company and she was
Yeah.
making millions, and yet her family didn't get it until she finally had to like create a trust and her dad had to sit in, and he was just blown away and like he didn't take her seriously. And I
Yeah.
was like, I get
Get
that.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
and my
Yeah.
family, they love me. It's not a negative thing at all. They just, we were raised in a farm town, you
Hmm.
know, simplistic living. And so a lot of times I'll mention something and they're like, what?
Right.
And
Yeah.
you're like, okay, never mind. Let's talk about cats.
Yes,
Uh,
that's right. But I mean, my sister runs an amazing business. She runs an events company. And it's huge. She's got massive clients, and she really does well. So she gets it with me. But the other members of the family were never quite
yeah,
sure what was going on, and it was fine. And my partner too. In fact, if nothing else, what I would say, I don't know if you found this, but it's actually quite good when people are not in your business. They don't understand your business in terms of family because they can't really comment,
yeah,
and you're left free to do whatever you want and no one's getting
yeah,
involved. But no, I hear you. And your background is something else with everything you've done with sports. So hearing you share this too for me is
yeah.
very
It's
powerful.
I think that we forget sometimes, like that we're all humans, right? Because people, I get this all the time. Oh, well, I mean, but Julie, your life's perfect. I'm like, oh my God, my life's not perfect. It's not perfect. I have issues and trauma and feelings. But, people a lot of times only see the best version of us in social
Hmm.
media, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
don't post our issues or, things like that because we don't want people to see us like that. And that's fully understandable. But I think a lot of times we put women, especially on a high pedestal, and then we forget that they should be on a pedestal with that person, you know.
Hmm.
And several years ago, like I said, I've been doing this for about 7 years, but the first time I did this, I remember walking in the room and we had a barrier breaker there, a very popular barrier breaker who was like, I want to be part of this. I remember thinking, I can't share a stage with this woman. Like she's phenomenal. Who am I? She's a barrier breaker. And of course, she was very humble and amazing and wanted every woman on the stage with her. So I just love that you share that because I think there are a lot of women struggling with this, which ladies, if you're listening, this is why you need to come and get in. I'm going to say it wrong again.
That's all right. You're good. I like the way you say it. It's good.
I know, I know. I'm just going to add like a French twinge onto
It's
it.
beautiful.
Mess
It
it
sounds
up.
really classy.
I make it classy. Everyone says du charme for me, and it's du charme. So
I love your last name. I think it's so elegant.
you can
It's
say just say it with an accent like du charme.
Jamais. Yes, that's exactly right. I love it. Love
But I
it.
mean, this is what you do, right? I mean, this is what you do is you help women find that authentic path who are struggling
Yeah. I
through all your methods.
Yeah, and there's some methods I think, and we have to do it quick because over like a 12-week period usually because women have so much going on. And so I quickly realized that, with all of the beautiful things that plates that women spin, and I often encourage them to cut down on spinning quite so many because I know women love being creative, love
Yeah.
their families, of course, still want to have all of that side of their life running as well as their careers. Um, I do ask them to streamline it a bit in
Yeah.
order that they don't burn out.
Yes.
Um, and a lot of that also comes from, I love holding women accountable. Accountability is very big for me. I work with the Navy SEAL veterans. I work with men only in corporations, and I learned some really good stuff
Mm.
from men in business. It was tough, don't get me wrong, but I got some really good training in terms of accountability and speaking directly. And, there's some women that perhaps don't like that. They want to have that crutch, if you like, of holding on to a limiting belief that means they don't have to succeed.
Yeah.
And I really encourage women strongly to drop that and to create their own paradigm of success, and I I understand what it takes. And there's times where you're like, oh, I just wish this could happen. I could wave a magic wand and I didn't have to do the work. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunately it's not like that. We have to do the work. But hopefully it's work that we enjoy doing. And it's just step by step doing it. And if I'd known everything I know now, I think I probably would have accelerated my journey a lot quicker when I was in my 20s or 30s, of course. Hindsight is a beautiful thing. I have a degree in hindsight. But saying that, my journey was this journey to learn everything I did over a period of time to shape me. And this is what's happening to all of you out there.
Mhm.
All of these journeys that you're having and difficulties and challenges, and they're shaping you.
Mm.
They're shaping you. And at some point, very soon, you'll be able to join all the dots together and see why these experiences have been so valuable
Mm.
to get you where you are. And then to build that and take your offering, whatever that is, back into the world in a way where you're coming from a really deep place of commitment.
Mhm.
Girl, you've worked for this. You've been
Mhm.
through so much to get this out there. And then now it's time. Now it's
Mhm.
time. Because when you do, you make so much difference. If you're going to hold back, I'm pretty blunt. I will say if you're going to hold back on something, it's a version of being so selfish. If you're
Mm.
going to hold back, you're not sharing so much light that so many people could get to benefit from you.
Yeah.
And
That's powerful. No, I like that. That's a really good point about holding back and being selfish. That's powerful.
yeah, I mean, selfish is a good in some ways. Many times, selfish, taking care of yourself. And then there's selfish where it's holding back and not sharing. And this is
Mhm.
not to guilt trip, but hopefully give a different perspective
Yeah.
of when we do hold back, that other people don't get to benefit from what we're providing as a service or product.
Yeah, no, I love that because some people are so incredibly blessed and gifted, and their gift can be changing for so many
Totally.
people or the world. So I love that. Well, gosh, you have so many powerful things, and we're running out of time. So
No.
there's one question I always love to ask everyone
Yeah.
before the end, which is if you could go back to your younger self and give your
Mhm.
younger self advice, what would it be?
I think my nugget of wisdom would be don't mind what anybody else tells you. Believe in what you know is true.
That's good. So true, right? Like you said, hindsight.
Oh, yeah. Big degree. I have 5 degrees in hindsight.
So for our listeners, we're obviously going to put all the links in, but for those one who might be driving or working out, what is the best way to reach out to you? What's the best website or connects for you that you prefer?
My website is nicolasalter.com. And that's Salter, Salter. And then you can reach me via email to salternicola@gmail.com. Those are the best ways to reach me.
Perfect. And do you have anything new coming out that you want us to keep our eyes out for?
I have two things. I have a VIP one-day mastermind in May, 25th of May, helping women to up-level their brand and really focus on the solutions they provide and work with the clients that they want to work with. And then I have a book I'm working on, which is pretty much finished. It's about to be published soon, called Finding Your Queen. So I'll be updating you on that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We'll post
So
on that for sure. So
thank you.
we'll make sure also to put that VIP info in the link. So I'll have you send that over
Thank
to
you.
me and we'll do that as well. And, it's just been such a pleasure because this is, as I've gotten older, understanding the brain and what you do is so important to me because it helps me make sense of my world. Really, really does, right? Because you kind of go like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening? Why am I doing? So I love that. And I love that, you are on a path to help women, even though we love our male counterparts. I see a lot of women that struggle with this. And so I'm excited to connect all of our She Talkers with you. So we can continue to unite and build our sisterhood. So thank you so much for being on the show. And as I always say, live, love, laugh, and always be your authentic self.
Thanks for listening to Lead and Empower Her with your host, Dr. Julie Ducharme. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we'll see you on the next episode.